Hello, good morning.
Hi, Anupam. Let's wait a couple minutes, see if anybody else joins. Right, let's get started. Welcome to the April 23rd SIG call. So today we have Anupam's proposed report handler, comparison generator for the site. So thanks, Anupam. Um, so as you saw, I was just going through it quickly there. Um, and
Yeah,
you
yeah, I
you
can
left
tell you
a
what's the PR is doing actually. If you have,
yeah if you want to go ahead. It's fairly straightforward, I think. But
yeah, yeah. So is what I saw is what happens is that there is a step called the docs step in the make file that actually creates the site, and in that make file I added another dependency, is the generate conformance. So what this will do is it will go through all the reports.yaml that are there in a defined directory. The defined directory is in line 32, site SRC implementation. It figures out what are the report.yaml file there and parses the metadata like the organization name, project name, the number of tests that was successful, the total number of tests, that was there, and then creates an HTML table, and not an HTML table, it's like a markdown table,
Yeah.
and then uh, writes it inside a directory called comparisons. And then when the mkdocs builds the site from all the MD files, it finds it is able to transform that MD files into corresponding HTML files.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Um, okay, and it uses PyYAML, of course. And so you left a few points of discussion, questions in the PR itself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so those. Um, yeah, I'll answer in the PR as well, but I don't think we need a column that explicitly says that all the required tests have passed. Um, well, yeah. So what I'm wondering is so well, you'll know because you've been looking at this a lot more closely than I have recently. But in the total 27, are there any that aren't required?
Yeah, there are like two
Yeah.
categories of tests. One is required and optional. So that's why I was thinking if
Right.
there is an
Okay.
implementer who passes all the required but don't pass the optional one.
Okay. So in that case, yeah, we do need the information either as um, so what seems to me like would be the most useful, but I don't know if we have the information. Um, what would be most useful is here if instead of just the number of past tests and the total number of tests, we have the total number of past tests, the total number of past required tests, and then the two totals as well. So let's say, for example, there's 20 required tests, and here the implementation is passing one required test and one optional test, then this would show up as 1, 1, 20, and 27. Because that would show how far away the implementation is from the required features.
Mhm.
But if that's too difficult, then yeah, just something that says that all the required tests have passed. Um, Table manually
Yeah, no,
sorted
no,
that.
that's difficult actually.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Table alphabetically sorted. That's fine. Um, so this one here, every time a new MCS API is raised, it needs to be updated in the nav field.
Yeah, so this is the manual part. So the comparison
Oh, this one
directory,
here.
which yeah, this is the part.
Yeah. And that ends up being a bit weird because, well, so it feels a bit weird to me because we end up with something here that's in the committed mkdocs.yaml, but the comparisons director is always ignored. So all these files will never be in Git. So I'm sort of wondering if maybe what we need is instead of having this in mkdocs.yaml directly, maybe what would make sense is to have so let's say this turned into mkdocs.yaml.in, something like that, and then the makefile. So when it runs the comparison generation, it adds entries here.
Could you please repeat that part?
So what I'm thinking is maybe this could be added automatically whenever you run
Okay.
the conformance test. That way, uh, whenever a new implementation is added, next time we run the website generation, it'll be picked up. The comparison gets generated in the MCS implementations directory, and the mkdocs.yaml file is updated. That means we don't need to manually add entries here for the versions. And so I'm curious to what you meant by um, what I should do is just this. Uh, Here, yeah, you said yeah, what to show if for an MCS API version there is no implementation. Currently it shows 404 not found. So I take it that by that you mean if we add here mkdocs.yaml, let's say we release v050, so we add the line
Mm-hmm.
here with the pointer to this file v050, but then that's
Mm-hmm.
not generated by the conformance matrix generator because there's no implementation. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a link in the navigation, but there's no actual file. So we'd avoid that by having this automatically generated. Um, but it does mean so the disadvantage is that the when a new version of MCS API is released, as long as there's no implementation that's submitted, then it will look like the website's just out of date.
So another
Mm.
thing that came to my mind is that instead of showing 404, we can show an empty table
Yeah.
as the row, but the header rows, but doesn't have the.
Mm. But that also means figuring out which versions are actually available. But maybe we can do that in maybe we can just list the tags using the GitHub API, and then we could have something like so I'll write this down all down anyway, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, so I'm just thinking maybe what we could do is have the Python script use the GitHub API to, or even in the makefile, because it might be just simpler to do it with the GH command line tool. But list the tags from the MCS API itself,
Mhm.
and then in the Python script, when it processes the implementations, remember what the oldest one is. So that marks the point at which we start caring about implementations. And then for every tag that exists after that, produce an empty table if there aren't any implementations. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, but it could be possible that a minor version is released that doesn't have any implementation, but the major
Exactly. And
version.
yeah, and it will stay forever
Mhm.
empty. So maybe what we want instead then, so instead of having one MD file per MCS API version, maybe we just have a single comparison table that lists
Okay.
the MCS API version in each row. And that way, yeah, because I think that's something we discussed. So probably maybe before you got involved, um, there's this idea that eventually we'd time out. Um, so imagine, right, you've got test organization there that submits a test report. And so we say, right, this is a conformant implementation if they pass all the required tests, but that only stays valid for a certain amount of time if they don't resubmit. So I can't remember what we'd settled upon, but there were some we'd discussed indicating in the table that implementations had been verified against an old version of the MCS API. So that only makes sense if there's a single table that lists everything. And I think that makes it simpler for your script as well.
Yeah, yeah, it would be simpler. Yeah.
All right, so maybe let's do that then, because that fixes a number of problems. Um, it raises a few other questions as well, though, right? Like if you have a single implementation that has multiple different reports, how do you show that in the table? Do you just keep the latest one, or do you keep the best one, or both? Um, Maybe what we can do obviously it's a bit difficult to reason about too without seeing actually how people submit reports, but
Yeah, makes
maybe what we can do for the time being is just have a single table. So you generate a single comparison.md file that has everything. So that avoids having to deal with mm, MCS API releases that have no conformant implementations. Avoids having to update the nav field in mkdocs.yaml. So a single comparison.md file that has everything
Mhm.
sorted alphabetically and by um, maybe so alphabetically and then by MCS API version and then by implementation version.
I was thinking to have the MCS version as a separate section, so it's like the latest one appears at the top, and then the
Okay,
previous one.
that would work too. Yeah, yeah, probably make it easier to read as well.
Yeah,
So in that case, then sorted by in descending order by MCS API version, one section per MCS API version. Yeah,
yeah, yes, yes.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and
Um,
for multiple like projects submitting the report for the same MCS version, that was the question, right?
and no, well, so what I was wondering was, so let's take Submariner for example. Submariner submits a report for, Submariner will end up doing two things. Uh, Generating multiple, one conformance report per Submariner version that's of interest, and multi and one, and also updating them when new MCS API versions are released. So that means in a single table, with one section per MCS API version, uh, you won't have duplicates per MCS
Mm-hmm.
API revision in the table, but in
Mm-hmm.
a single table, you might have for the same implementation, same organization and project, multiple reports, one per version. And uh, in a way, so I can see two things there. We could argue that so I was going to say we could argue that if one of the reports says that it's fully conformant, then we should include that. But maybe we should ignore, and if that's the case, then ignore the non-conformant ones. But that doesn't. Maybe we shouldn't be filtering at all, and we should just include all the reports. So that
Mm-hmm.
was
Yeah,
that. So let's say, for example, Submariner version 0.19.1 isn't fully conformant, but 0.20 is. So then 0.20 shows up as fully conformant in the table, but 0.19 is also listed so that people know that 0.19 isn't fully conformant.
yeah. I think showing two would be better because it gives people better sense
Yeah.
why. some
Yeah.
other version is not good and why the version is
Yeah,
good.
exactly. Yeah. And most projects, well, so projects like GKE and so on, they're a bit different because in a cloud provider, you never get several different implementations at once. But for projects like Submariner, there are several branches that are maintained. And so things can change in different versions and people might use different versions. So yeah, I think it
Mm,
makes sense to have everything. Okay. So then, yeah. So this is beyond outside the scope of this particular PR, but we need to figure out how we hook this into the release process, but we can tackle that later.
yeah,
This is great, thanks. And so
thank
I like that you're only well apart from the mkdocs thing, but we've addressed that. Um, there's nothing in the script itself that hard codes any versions. So like you say, you had a question. Yeah. Is V041 the right MCS version to start? I think not, because as you point out, the option it just isn't there. So it'll be
you. Mhm.
050, probably the V1 Beta 1 version that should be released next week. Uh, and that will happen, then things will happen automatically as people submit reports. Um,
Yeah, the metadata generating the metadata in the report.yaml, it did not make the 0.5.0 cut actually.
well, 050 isn't released yet, so it
Oh,
should.
okay. So there was one issue I think you created, and there was some list of PRs that
Yeah.
0.50 will contain, and it
So
only
zero
has,
five.
yeah, and this is the one.
Yeah. So that isn't there.
Yeah, so it only has the generation of report in YAML file, but there was another PR that I created to include the metadata in the report.yaml
Oh,
file.
did I forgot that one.
And I think that was merged
It's
after
merged.
the
Yeah. So
creation of
it'll be in
our.
there. But
Oh,
yeah,
okay, okay, okay.
let me just add it then. Yep. So it's definitely supposed to be part of the release. So I'll add it. Uh, what was it called again? There we go.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's everything. All right. Well, that's great progress. Thanks. So, like I said, I'll write up my comments here. Um, and yeah, then we can start thinking about the release process.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot.
yeah, thank you.
Was there
Also,
anything
I
else you?
was,
Yeah, go ahead.
yes, I was saying that I was able, means I was trying to write that generate conformance matrix in a way so that if there is another multi-cluster project which tries to generate the conformance matrix, it should be able to
Mm,
use that Python file to generate uh,
nice.
the.
Yep.
But I think
Yeah, that's it.
one assumption would be that the number of tests passed and total number of tests, those those information that is passed from the YAML should be in that particular format. If it is not, then We have to wait.
Yes. Yeah, then you'll have to adapt it. Well, yeah. But yeah, that's a good point. So that means, right, so th this part is written in a project independent manner as long as the projects follow the same output format as MCS API. But
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
something
yeah.
to bear in mind for conformance tests and other projects. Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks.
Yes. Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay, right. Well, thank you very much. I
Thank
need
you.
to drop because I've got another call coming up. But yeah, yeah, thanks. This is really great.
Yeah, thank you.
See you next time.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, well, have a good rest of the day.
Yeah. Same to you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.